Hello, everyone. This is Steve Crawford, and once again, we have the 7-minute spotlight where we take a look at stories, ideas, and concepts for encouragement and inspiration. Today, we're going to start out with the names of 10 people that you probably haven't heard of. I hadn't heard of them, I knew of them, maybe I'd heard of it, but if you ask these people's names, we wouldn't get it. And this is from the Bible, it's from the Old Testament. I'm going to read these names to you. I'll probably mispronounce some. I apologize in advance. But there is Shammah, Shaphat, Igal, Palti, Gadil, Gadai, Amiel, Sethur, Nabi, and Jeuel. And you might say, who are these guys? There's a story about them in the Bible, and they had been given an assignment, but they went on that assignment with two other people that you probably have heard of, Joshua and Caleb. Their assignment was to go into the promised land, check it out, and what is it going to take possession of the promised land. And the 10 that I mentioned came back full of worries and concerns. The land is great, but there's giants in the land, and they're huge, and we look like grasshoppers, and there's this problem and that problem, and it's going to overcome us, and we'll never be able to do it, because they had forgotten the truth that God said that they'd be able to do it. And Joshua and Caleb, and this is Steve's version of the Bible, said, hey, we can take these guys. We've got God on our side. Let's go in and kick butt. I won't say that in the Bible that way, but that's the way I put it. But the people listened to the 10 who had false information instead of listening to the 2 that had the correct information. And we run into that a lot, and we end up describing it, say, as a lack of courage. I met a guy, 12, 15 years ago, named Dave Anderson, really great leadership trainer. And he says that the definition of courage is acting despite of perceived or actual risk. Well, in this case, with these 10 guys that we don't know that well, it was perceived risk. Yeah, it was risk, but their perception, which was based on fear, which is rooted in fear, was they forgot the fact that God will take care of them. And so they came up with all these reasons that we can't do it. And that happens to us in our lives today. There's a prison that our minds can be in, and it's not a prison of iron and steel bars and, concrete and everything like that. But this mental prison is built with pride, fear, shame, guilt, anxiety, worry, and as Dave Anderson said, we perceive problems that aren't there. And some of the things there are risks there. There's risk in starting a new business. There's risk in getting married, in getting a relationship, in having children, moving to a new city, a new job. There's risk involved in everything, and you have to weigh out that risk. But how much of it is the fear on the perception that things are going to be bad, that we really are comfortable with the cocoon that we're living in, if you want to call it that. It's a comfort zone, and that we want what's outside of it, but fear keeps us from taking the steps. Well, these 10 spies that didn't have the right outlook actually influenced the course of history for the Israelites. This, along with a bunch of other activities, caused them to wander for 40 years in the desert. And those that did not have faith, those that weren't willing to take a risk, those that did not have courage, did not get to enter the promised land. But Joshua and Caleb, even at their older age, were able to be conquerors because, number one, God was on their side. God was on everybody's side. We just have to understand that we have to grab hold of it and follow and trust. But where that perception comes in is deception. And I've mentioned this before. We have an enemy called Satan who wants to deceive us. There's an older spotlight that we did a few weeks ago that says, don't believe the lies. And what happened to these 10 men who have become obscure, I put it this way: if you yield to fear, you'll become obscure. And these 10 guys became obscure. We don't know their names because they yielded to a lie. They didn't listen to the truth that they could really do it. So what does that do for us today? I think it's important to remember that courage and taking action does not include foolish behavior. Shortly before the beginning of the COVID attack here in the United States, so I'm going to say this is in early 2020 probably, a friend of ours, Mary and I have this really dear friend named Karen, and Karen had traveled from where she lived to her hometown, Washington, D.C., to visit with a friend and spend a weekend there, and then flew back home. And I asked Karen, I said, how was it with the travel and the, people worried about the risk of COVID? And Karen has been such a great influence in my life and in Mary's life. And Karen said, Steve, God has my days numbered. I might die in a plane crash or a heart attack or a car accident or die of old age or of COVID or something else. And I am just not going to spend my time thinking about that. And since that day, that inspired me so much that you'll see on emails or things that I send out, it says, never foolish, never fearful. So for example, I'm not afraid of COVID, but I don't go around licking doorknobs. We can be wise and not foolish and still demonstrate courage. And sometimes that courage is just taking a step. Sometimes it's just willing to accept the unknown, because the unknown that we're accepting sometimes is that it's this thing or that thing, and they're not inherently by themselves good or bad. It's just that they're unknown. And when we have a fear of the unknown, well, that's a little bit different. I'm not sure I like that. We all get accustomed to things. I have that problem sometimes. We go to the same restaurant all the time because we're accustomed to it. We're not afraid of the other restaurants, but sometimes we have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and try something new. And hey, this was really pretty good. We won't know if we won't try. So my question today is there something that you need to take courage and take a step in doing? That's for each of us to decide. I know one of the things for myself is that I have to be able to engage more with my team at work so that I can be a better leader. We love to hear from you. If you have any responses, any questions, our contact information is on the screen. God bless you all. We'll see you next time.